Part 342. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3421. He tied up the bundle, put it into a small cave, and pressed it down with a small stone, then swept away the traces, and dragged Xia Xian away. Walking, Zhou Yin hugged Xia Xian into his arms, his voice trembling slightly. "Xiniang, I'm sorry." The voice was barely audible, but Xian Niang could hear it clearly. Her eyes were reddish. She pushed him away, and saw two men in black with swords standing behind, looking them up and down with sharp eyes. The uneasiness that had been lingering in his heart suddenly fell to the ground. The man in black looked at them indifferently, and asked, "Did you meet two people at the foot of the mountain before, and the donkey cart they rode belonged to your husband and wife?" Zhou Yin pulled Xia Xian behind him to protect him, nodded and said, "Yes, we have handed over all the money, there is really nothing left. Man, can you let us go?" Xia Xian nodded while hiding behind Zhou Yin. The man in black sneered, and approached the two of them with a sword in his hand. "You think I'm a fool? Bai Qi would steal people's property? Say, where is the thing he gave you? I don't know who you are talking about, but we did meet two people at the foot of the mountain before. They were very fierce and said they wanted to borrow our car. I didn't want to borrow it, but they were covered in blood and fierce. We were afraid." He left the car to them and ran for his life. The man in black looked past him at Xia Xian, and said with a smirk, "If you don't tell me, I have a way for you to say it. It's not on Bai Qi's master and servant, it must be on you." After all, he leaped deep and landed behind Zhou Yin, reaching out to grab Xia Xian. But Zhou Yin's movements were not slow. When he jumped up, he quickly turned around to block Xia Xian, stretched out his hand and pushed her to the other side, and shouted, "Run, run towards me, and you just now, run in the direction you said." Xia Xian fell to the ground and saw Zhou Yin and the man in black fighting together, so she wiped the tears off her face, got up and ran. Seeing this, the other man in black turned around and was about to chase after him, but Zhou Yin ignored the sword that was about to fall on his body, turned around and stopped him. He pounced on him, hugged him directly and rolled down the hillside. The man in black stabbed him twice but couldn't stop him. Zhou Yin's style of play is completely reckless. Even if the people in black are good at martial arts, they are still confused by his style of play. He tightly strangled the throat of the man in black under him, picked up a stone from the ground and smashed it hard at his forehead. The man in black who was chasing after him stabbed him with a sword, pierced his wrist, and slashed his face, but he didn't dare to kill him. He still had to ask where the thing was. Zhou Yin strangled a man in black abruptly, and then picked up his sword with his left hand to face another man in black. He knows some kung fu, but not much, and some of them are just unscrupulous, brave, not like the man in black, who wants to get something from his mouth, so even if he can hurt him, he dare not take it seriously, kill him. The man in black also quickly realized that this was not good for him, because he was restrained and the other party was too desperate, so he also suffered some injuries. So Xia Xian had to be caught. The man in black left Zhou Yin behind, turned around, and chased after Xia Xian where he had escaped. Zhou Yin's expression changed, and he followed with the sword in his hand. Xia Xian buried her head in running, feeling that she had been running for a long time, but when she raised her head, Zhou Yin was kicked in front of her. Xia Xian screamed and rushed to support him. Seeing the bones, there is a blood hole on the waist and abdomen that keeps bleeding. She was so frightened that she quickly reached out to cover his wound. "Zhou Yin, Zhou Yin." Zhou Yin tried to sit up, pulled Xia Xian behind him, raised his eyes to look at the man in black who kept approaching him. His sword was knocked down, his eyes flashed fiercely, but the expression on his face changed in the next moment. They all begged, "Hero, we really don't have what you said. If you don't believe me, I took off my clothes and showed you, and asked the hero to let me go. There is a 60-year-old mother in my family, and there are children waiting to be fed. I can't die. Hand over the things if you're afraid of death, the man in black said expressionlessly. I don't care about you killing my companion. Zhou Yin almost gritted his teeth. He stood in front of Xia Xian, and his heart was entangled. He couldn't bear Xia Xian to die here, but... He raised his eyes and looked at the man in black. These people were guessing, and they could kill him without evidence. For those evidences, it is unknown how many people died. At this moment, many things flashed through Zhou Yin's mind, including brothers and sisters-in-law, daughters-in-law, and Bai Qi's master and servant. Finally, he turned his head slightly to look at his wife. Xia Xian burst into tears, hugged him from behind, choked up and said, "He won't let me go." That's right, they can't escape if they don't hand over the things. If they hand them over, they will die, and there are household registration and road guides they brought when they went to pick up the things in the package. Once they find out, maybe they will return, cut the weeds and roots to find Qilai village. Zhou Yinqiang suppressed the soreness in his heart, held Xia Xian's hand tightly, and said in a low voice, "I am sorry for you, I am too confident. I thought no one would come after me." Xia Xian shook her head. "No, you didn't apologize to me." Although the sword was in front of him, Zhou Yin was not willing to give up. He grabbed a handful of soil, raised it when the man in black came up, got up, grabbed Xia Xian, and ran away. He said to Xia Xian, "Even if you can't run, you still have to run. You must run forward and don't look back. My daughter is still waiting for you at home. Maybe God took pity on us and let us live." Because of Zhou Yin's words, Xia Xian supported him and kept running. The man in black, who was blinded by the soil, was furious, and his heart was full of hostility. Seeing that they wanted to live so much, he simply chased after them with a sword and teased, "Two ants, are you still thinking about stealing life?" There were more and more injuries on Zhou Yin's body. The other party seemed to like to draw swords on his face and legs. Seeing his face covered with blood, his wife screamed in shock and dragged her injured leg forward. "He is very happy." The man in black teased them for a long time, and seemed to be bored, so he landed directly in front of them, blocking their way, pointed his sword at Xia Xian and asked Zhou Yin, "I'll ask you one last time, do you want to tell me?" Zhou Yin was covered in blood at this moment. He got up from the ground and wanted to hide Xia Xian behind his back, but Xia Xian pressed his hand, tears fell drop by drop, dripping on the back of his hand, and said in a low voice, "Don't be afraid." After finishing speaking, he turned around and pounced on the sword. The sharp sword entered his body, and Xia Xian fell limply to the ground. Zhou Yin's pupils shrank. "Xiniang." He climbed up to catch her, and stretched out his hand to cover her wound. Xia Xian held his hand tightly and said, "I know, you are afraid of me alone, so don't be afraid now." She said softly, "I don't regret it, and you don't regret it either, okay?" Zhou Yin hugged her and smiled, but couldn't help the tears falling on her face. He nodded and said, "Okay, I don't regret it, I don't regret it." Zhou Yin said that he didn't regret it, but he still regretted it in his heart. He shouldn't have taken Xia Xian out today, he should have left her at home. The girl is still so young, and it's just when she needs her mother's company. Why is he so confused? Did she come out in the tropics? The brilliance in Xia Xian's eyes gradually dissipated. Zhou Yin hugged her, and there was no reason to run away. He looked up at the man in black, reached out and grabbed his sword. His eyes were full of madness. "What are you waiting for? What else can you learn from me? You." Zhou Yin held the blade of the sword with his hand and pulled it towards him. The man in black withdrew the sword. His face was full of provocative anger. "Do you really think I won't kill you?" He stabbed towards his arm, but Zhou Yin moved his body, and the sword pierced directly into his chest. The man in black was furious, and drew his sword out. Seeing that the two of them fell together with their hands clasped, their eyes closed, their breathing became weaker and weaker, and finally they were silent. When he calmed down, there were only two quietly bleeding corpses on the ground. He stepped forward and turned over. There was indeed no evidence on them, not even anything to prove their identities. The man in black frowned, and was thinking about whether he should take the body back for careful investigation, when a firework exploded in the dark sky, which was a signal of an emergency call. He looked down at the two corpses on the ground, kicked them and turned around to leave. The thing might not really be on them, but where the fireworks exploded. Zhou Yin and Xia Xian didn't return all night. Although the old Zhou's family was puzzled, they didn't worry too much. They thought they didn't receive anything, so they stayed in the county for an extra night. It started to rain that night, and the next day was also drowsy. It didn't look like Xining was sunny, so Zhou Jin only took Zhou Dalan and Wednesday Lang to the field, leaving Zhou Lang with a few younger brothers to clean up the house. Zhou Lang felt that the thatched house would still be low and drowsy even if it was tidied up, and it would not be very clean, so he groped here and there. Find mushrooms. Zhou Lang chased him out with a broom, only in time to see his back. You're lazy again. Zhou Lang shouted without looking back, I'm going to find mushrooms for my uncle, the mushroom stew is delicious. A group of friends ran up the mountain with bare hands, laughing and laughing, not sure if they were really looking for mushrooms. When they got to the mountain, everyone dispersed to look for mushrooms by themselves. Zhou Lang not only wanted to find mushrooms, but also pheasants and rabbits, so he walked farther away. He hummed and walked around two trees. It came into view so abruptly. Zhou Lang was taken aback, his hands and feet were a little cold, and it took him a while to find his voice, little, uncle. He ran up and crawled up, knelt down to look, the ground was covered with blood, and the face of the person who fell on the ground was pale, and his face was scratched with scars, almost invisible. But I can't tell anymore, this is also the uncle who I met yesterday morning, Zhou Lang still recognizes it. He stretched out his hand to push him, but he didn't dare to touch him when he reached out. Thursday, where have you been? Come and see, I found 2 clusters of mushrooms, and I will share one with you. The little friend came over as he spoke, and when he saw the people on the ground screamed, he leaned back, he fell to the ground and rolled down twice before stopping. Here, how come there are dead people here? Only then did Zhou Lang dare to reach out to touch Zhou Yin and Xia Xian. His hands were cold and breathless. Zhou Lang couldn't help crying, Uncle, Aunt, Uncle. He turned his head and cried to his friends, go back and call someone, this is my uncle. Someone turned around and ran into the village. Zhou Yin stretched out his arms to hug Zhou Yin, trying to pick him up, but he was too young, and fell down after only lifting it. When Tuesday Lang ran up with the people from the village, he saw Zhou Lang was sitting beside Zhou Yin crying sadly, and when he saw him, he burst into tears, second brother, my uncle is dead. Zhou Lang's expression was unbelievable, and the villagers were also in a daze. How could a person who was fine yesterday morning become like this in just one day? Zhou Hu, who followed, shook his hands and said, Erlang and the others are useless, let's take Uncle Yin and Aunt back first. Only then did the villagers come to their senses, and rushed forward to carry them. Zhou Lang and Zhou Lang followed behind and carried them back to the village. Just after entering the village, it rained heavily. Seeing Zhou Yin and Xia Xian being carried into the house, Mrsgn was shocked and passed out directly. When she woke up, she still felt that she was dreaming, but when she heard the crying from the main room, she knew it was not a dream. She supported herself and went out. Xiao Qian and others were kneeling on the ground crying, Zhou Yin and Xia Xian were lying on the mat, their bodies were still bloody, obviously everyone didn't react much. Qian asked with trembling lips, where's Zhou Jin? Zhou Lang wiped his tears and said, Father and the village chief went to beg Master Bai, there must be bandits in our county. Father went to beg Master Bai to go to the county government to ask the county magistrate to send someone to destroy the bandits and avenge my uncle. Zhou Yin went to the county town to get the belongings consigned back, but now the husband and wife died suddenly, and the belongings and the donkey cart they brought were nowhere to be found, so they must have been robbed. The villagers in Qilai village all believed that Zhou Yin was killed by bandits, but they didn't know when there were such vicious people in their area. If they had known. Zhou Lang wiped away his tears and said, I knew we should have gone with my uncle yesterday morning. There were so many people there, those bandits would not dare to rob my uncle. Master Bai didn't expect such a bad thing to happen in Lujiang County, so he came to Lao Zhou's house to take a look at Zhou Yin and Xia Xian, and said straight away, I'll follow you into the city when the rain stops. There are bandits in Lujiang County, can they go out with peace of mind in the future? But before the rain stopped, people from the government came into the village on horseback, looking for someone with portraits in their hands. Because Master Bai's house is the largest, and it looks like the leader at first glance, and when officials are looking for someone to do business, they always look for such a person first. So they went directly to the White House first. Master Bai couldn't help but twitched when he saw Zhou Yin in the portrait, and took the portrait calmly and asked, who is the person in this portrait? He is an important criminal wanted by the court. Has Master Bai ever seen him? Master Bai's thoughts turned, and finally he shook his head, and calmly glanced at the housekeeper next to him, and said, I've never seen it before. He smiled and said, since I lived in seclusion in Qilai village, I seldom go out. This person doesn't look like a person from Qilai village. I don't know many people outside. Why don't we invite Li Zheng and the village chief to ask questions? I'm sure I'll know more about this area. The official errand should be sent down. Master Bai nodded slightly to the housekeeper. The butler hurried to find someone. The village chief and Zhou Jin are preparing to go to the county government to file a complaint. Zhou Jin took out all the money from his family. Not only does he need to pay for official errands, but he also has to buy them 2 good coffins. Butler Bai trotted over, pulled them aside and said in a low voice, where are the bodies of Zhou Yin and his wife? He said, an official came and said that Zhou Yin was a wanted criminal, he seemed to be a bandit. Our master and the official said they hadn't seen it, but they will definitely come to the village to inquire in a while. Zhou Jin was startled, and lost his voice, impossible, how could my second child be a bandit? Zhou Jin stopped the village chief and was about to sue for justice. The butler stopped them and said, my master also thought it was impossible, so he concealed it for you, but the officials are very sure, the master sees that there is something wrong with their situation, you should hide them first, and then go to find out the truth after dealing with them. The village chief also felt something was wrong, so he grabbed Zhou Jin and said, Uncle Jin, Uncle Xiao Yin has been in Shangzhou before, not to mention that he can't be a bandit, even if he did, it should be the officials from Shangzhou who arrested him. As soon as he came back, the officials here arrested him. Little Uncle Yin must have been wronged, and seek justice from the person who wronged him. Can this grievance be redressed? That. The village head said, get the people in the village first, and deal with the officials. The village chief and Zhou Jin called for all their sons, as well as the young people who were staying in the courtyard of the old Zhou's house at this time, and asked them to inform all the people in the village after some instructions. The village chief took Zhou Jin to the Beifu to meet the officials. When he saw Zhou Yin, who was 7 to 80% like on the portrait, he lowered his eyes and said, I haven't seen it before. He's not from our village. The official squinted his eyes and looked at them, I really haven't seen them before. They went down the cliff yesterday to search for Urji's body, but they couldn't find it, so they wasted all night. Today they went up the mountain to look for the body, but they couldn't find it. It rained heavily again today, and the traces on the mountain were washed away. It is not known whether the corpse was dragged away by wild animals or taken away by people. No, the village chief said timidly but firmly, this person is not from Arkilai village at first glance, and Arkilai village is remote, and no outsiders come in. The officer pondered, we're going to search the village. The village chief immediately said, our village has a roster. If you don't believe me, I can ask all the men in the village to come and check it. If it's a house, it only rained. The countryside like ours is very dirty. I'm afraid it will pollute your lord feed. Li Zheng also rushed over, seeing the person in the portrait, his heart skipped a beat. He had never seen the young Zhou Yin, but he was no stranger to the young Zhou Yin. Moreover, he had heard people say the day before yesterday that Zhou Yin, who sold himself as a slave in Qilai village, seemed to have returned to his hometown to visit his relatives. He is Li Zheng, the most well-informed person within a mile. Li Zheng swallowed his saliva. Although he only listened to the second half, he knew what happened. He took a look at Master Bai's face, and could only follow their words, what are you doing in a daze? Why don't you hurry up and get rid of the old man in the village? Are all the men called to the entrance of the village? He said, don't use the young ones to pollute the eyes of the adults. Call everyone over the age of 16. The official added coldly, it's 12 years old. Yes, yes, Li Zheng turned his head and scolded the village head and Zhou Jin who bowed their heads, did you hear that? You are 12 years old, why don't you go find someone? The officer stretched out his hand, where's the roster? Before Li Zheng came, he took his things with him, quickly took out the booklet in his arms, turned to the page of Qilai village, and said, look at the back, there are their dates of birth. The villagers gathered at the entrance of the village silently. At this time, the rain started to fall again, and the boys over 12 years old stood in a row at the entrance of the village. When they stood still in front, the women who stayed at home quietly gathered at Lao Zhou's house. An old woman stretched out her hand to support Jianxi who was about to faint again and said, you can't stay at home. Once the officials can't find anyone in front, start searching and it will be over. Bury it. Qian's eyes were full of confusion, where can I find a coffin right now? Even if you find it, there's no time to bury it. Let's keep everything simple. Suppressing her grief, Qian asked her daughters-in-law to bring the quilt brought back by Zhou Yin, and carried Zhou Yin and Xia Xian, who held hands tightly together, into the quilt and wrapped them up, and then wrapped the quilt with oilcloth. The women silently carried out the tarpaulin that wrapped the two of them, carried them to the field, and dug up a piece of land next to Zhou Jin's parents. They were buried silently in the rain. Nanan woke up, opened her eyes and looked around, but she still didn't see anyone she was familiar with, so she couldn't help but pursed her mouth and began to cry. Xiao Qian hurriedly hugged her in her arms and coaxed her, suppressing her grief and said, good boy, don't cry, sister-in-law will change your clothes for you. Little Qian took off the soft clothes on her body and put Aria's old clothes on her, and hid all the things they brought back in the kitchen. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, and the faces of the villagers standing in the rain turned pale, but the officials didn't suspect it. It's really cold in the rain at the moment, they checked the list one by one. Zhou Lang's face was the palest, and his hands and feet were trembling a little. He had just changed out of his bloody clothes, and his daughter had just been hidden in the bed, and she was sleeping soundly at this moment. I don't know if she woke up and couldn't see anyone. Cry. The official frowned and asked, did anyone come in from the village recently? The village chief replied firmly, no. The official took a look at his colleagues and decided to go to the village to check. Just a quick look, there are only women and children at home in each family, indeed there are no outsiders, the official sent away frowning, and said to Li Zheng, once you find the person in the portrait, report it to the government immediately. Li Zheng should be right again and again. It was only when the officer left that Li Zheng realized what he had done. He turned his head and gave the village head and Zhou Jin a sneaky look, then looked at Master Bai in a fawning manner. Master Bai, this matter. Master Bai turned and left. This matter has nothing to do with me, I just pretend that I don't know anything, but if something happens one day, you have to prepare for the possibility of being linked. Lijhan and the village head Zhou Jin nodded and bowed to send Master Bai away. Zhou Jin turned his head to meet Lijhan's gaze, then glanced at the young and old who were still looking at him in the rain, gritted his teeth, turned around and knelt down before the whole village. Followers, ladies and gentlemen, this time it is our old Zhou family who has troubled everyone, but please see that Zhou Yin saved everyone's life, and save his daughter as well. Everyone knows the character of our little Yin. It's impossible to be a bandit. Zhou Dalan and his younger brothers knelt down together and silently kowtowed. The village chief sighed and said, I told the officials that way before, and it's impossible to go back on this matter. Let's just pretend that there is no such person in the village. Li Zheng, what do you think? Li Zheng snorted coldly, flung his sleeves and left. What did I say? I don't know anything. Once he left, the rest was Qilai village's own business. The villagers were also panicked, but it was impossible to get them to confess Zhou Yin. This was not only a matter of the dead, but they still had a child left. Once Zhou Yin was confessed, not to mention the fate of Zhou Jin's family, their daughter would definitely not be well. What about the child? Someone asked. What if someone finds out about the child's existence? Zhou Jin hurriedly said, the child was born to me and MRSGN, they. He gritted his teeth and said, it's just as if they never came back, and everyone doesn't know about it. My Zhou Yin sold himself and left. After so many years, everyone has forgotten what he looks like. The villagers looked at each other in blank dismay, and finally agreed. At old Zhou's house, the daughter who had changed her clothes was crying sadly, and Xiao Qian couldn't help crying along with her. Once she cried, the daughter stopped crying. Tears were still hanging on her face, but she looked at Xiao Qian curiously. Do not understand why she cried. Zhou Jin returned to the old Zhou's house covered in water. Qian's face was pale, but he just endured the pain and asked Feng to boil water for everyone to drink. The faces of the couple were horrific. The village chief stopped Zhou Dalan and said, I see that your parents' faces are not good, you brothers, be careful, don't let anything happen at this juncture. Zhou Dalan agrees. The village chief sighed and said, your uncle was raised by them as a son. They are the ones who are most saddened when something like this happens, but you have to tell them that there is another child in this family. Zhou Dalan regained his energy, nodded and went to find his parents, whispering, Father, Mother, my daughter is still at home. Only then did Zhou Jin and Qian's expressions change, and they insisted on looking for the child. The little girl who is only half a year old doesn't know anything, and she is eating the egg custard made by MRSGN in the house at this time. She cried too much today and is a little hungry. Seeing so many people rushing into the room at once, she was a little timid for the first time, so she turned around and hid in Xiaoqian's arms. Zhou Jin looked at her, and said after a while, from now on, she will be your younger sister, your own younger sister, and she will be ranked with you, 8th, so she will be called, Zhou Man. Good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3422. It was only when Xiaomu was 7 years old that he realized that he was different from his elder sister and younger brother. Well, there is actually not much difference. In addition to the different surnames, in the words of his parents, you inherited the surname of Xia's grandmother, and your elder sister and younger brother inherited the surname of your Bai's grandfather. It's really no different. And because the attitudes of the parents are the same, apart from the differences between the Xia family and the Bai family when facing their siblings, the attitudes of people outside are also the same. Since he was 7 years old, he has to officiate every year, read and copy the deeds of his great-grandparents and grandparents. He once felt very boring, but as the days went by and the older he got, the more he realized why his parents let him do this. These people are just names and stories on the genealogy, but when they are alive, they are lives. In his mother's words, they all lived too hard when they were young, especially grandfather Zhou Yin, who lived through suffering all his life, so as future generations, we have to live his share of happiness. Forget his kindness and inherit his morality, this is to live up to the ancestors. Xiaomu felt that his mother was right, so he weighed the three. After the Jinchi scientific examination, he went to Jianese Road to be a hermit. He recruited many students with the name of Jinchi, and took them here and there every year. Going around, teaching students while visiting the mountains and rivers, passing on the character of the ancestors by the way, what a wonderful thing. His father and his mother also thought it was good, so they resigned forcefully and left the capital under envy, and then they pretended to take a look at Jiangnan in 4 seasons for the emperor. Can't find anyone. Of course, this is something for later. What's more, he married a wife and had children, and his family has a close relationship with the Xia family and the Bai family, especially after his father finally separated their family. After the ancestral hall was also established in Chang'an, the two sects were closely related. Cough cough, you have to be close, after all, he and the Chang'an branch of the Bai family are brothers, aren't they? Although Bai Changsong looks more serious, he is still his younger brother, and as an elder brother, he can still temporarily suppress him. It took Xiaomu 10 years to move the tombs of his ancestors in Shangzhou and Mianzhou to Chang'an. For this reason, he spent all the lucky money he had saved for 18 years to buy a land in the suburbs of Beijing. He set the ancestral tomb on the treasure land of Fengshui, and there are 20 mu of paddy fields and 30 mu of dry land on the treasure land, which he uses as a sacrifice field. When he did these things well, his mother was so touched that she took him to pay homage to his grandparents, then hugged him and cried, then waved her hand and divided half of her private money with him in advance. You can use it to buy land and a house, Zhou Man said, this will be your family business from now on. Bai Changsong on the side watched with hot eyes, and hurriedly leaned over, Mother, look at me, look at me. Zhou Man reached out and pushed his head away, you're still young, I'll keep your share for you first. Bai Changsong was not reconciled, last time when my sister got married, you said that you gave her half of your private house, and now you give half to my elder brother, so how much do I have left? Zhou Man, don't worry, I've got it all. My private house won't go up if it's sold out. Your brother's share is no less than your sister's. Naturally, in the future, you won't get less than your brother and sister. Bai Changsong was slightly relieved, but he tilted his head and asked curiously, then I'll be allocated to your private house. Of course it will only be my private house. If you want to share it again, it will probably take me 100 years. Zhou Man rubbed his chin thoughtfully, but if I don't like you by then, I can share it with others. It's not impossible. Xiaomu asked nervously, for example. Like other people's children. Bai Changsong rolled his eyes and asked, Mother, does Dad know that you have so many private houses? He knows I have a private room. Then does he know there are so many? Zhou Man had a serious face, and threatened him with his fists clenched, if you dare to talk too much, I will share half of your private room in the future. Bai Changsong covered his mouth. Xiaomu laughed at the side. What he didn't tell his younger brother was that he not only got the private house from his mother, but also got his father's private house. After he spent all his New Year's money, his grandmother also gave him a lot. So Xiaomu is very rich now, so rich that now whenever he sees his younger brother, he will smile lovingly, which makes Bai Changsong shudder a lot. Xiaomu patted him on the shoulder to comfort him and said, after the Chinese New Year, I will give you the New Year's money. Bai Changsong was very stubborn, who wants your lucky money? You are not a few years older than me. Xiaomu skipped his words directly, and said to Zhou Man, Mother, when I went back to move the grave, I found that someone in Jianese Road had set up a long life tablet for my grandfather, so I plan to spend money to build a temple in Mianzhou and Lujiang counties respectively, and mark it with my grandfather and my grandfather. The statue of my grandmother gives the world a place to go when they want to worship. Zhou Man was stunned for a while and then nodded, okay, I will pay the money, and you can just do it. By the way, build more roads, Zhou Man said, let's build them in the names of your grandfather and grandmother, and build some in Mianzhou and Shangzhou. Bai Shan came in from outside the house and said, let's pay the money at home. He said to Zhou Man, just in time, the anniversary of the death of the young father-in-law and the young mother-in-law is coming soon. In previous years, they only performed rituals in the Suandu temple. This year, the grave was moved, and Wu Yuan grew up and built the ancestral hall. Let's make a big one. Zhou Man nodded, we can do it ourselves, don't spread it to the outside world, it's not good to alarm outsiders. Bai Changsong couldn't help raising his hand, father, mother, when I become the patriarch, can I also build a shrine for my grandfather, and then you will help me like this? Zhou Man looked at Bai Shan, and said with a half smile, it depends on whether your father can separate from the clan. Otherwise, if you want to be the eldest son and patriarch, you have to defeat the direct branch. Bai Changsong withdrew his hand, forget it, I just want to be the patriarch of my own family, not the patriarch of such a big clan. When Bai Changsong finally realized his wish, Xiaomu had already been the suzerain for many years. For this reason, he purposely led his group of children to Bai Changsong, and kept passing by him, see, they are all branches of our Xia family from now on, how about yours? Bai Changsong felt that he was an eyesore, so he simply got up, I have become the patriarch, when will you open the ancestral hall and let me go in to worship my grandfather and grandmother? Xiaomu waved his hand generously and said, any time is fine, I am the patriarch, I have the final say. So the next day, the two brothers took their children and knelt in Xia's ancestral hall. Bai Changsong bowed deeply, looked up at the names of his grandparents on the plaque and said, grandfather, grandmother, I will also be the head of the clan. From now on, I will watch and help each other with my eldest brother, and we will carry forward our Bai and Xia clans. Xiaomu on the side said, oh, there is also the Zhou family, but we don't need to worry about that. Uncle and cousin are too capable of giving birth. There are too many nephews and grandnephews born now, and I can't recognize them all. They don't need us to promote them. It will shine brighter. Bai Changsong gave his unreliable brother an elbow, telling him to be more honest. Xiaomu touched his chest and muttered a few times, but he still endured it temporarily, and said to his grandparents, father and mother should have come back for such a big matter, but they went to sea, and Long Zhou also saw them as we walked farther and farther, we could hardly see the clan, so we agreed to divide the clan. When they come back from overseas, they will definitely come to pay respects to their grandfather and grandmother, oh, and great-grandfather and great-grandmother. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3423. Yin Or knew that he was different from other children since he was a child, because he was like an ice cube in summer, he had to be carefully cared for and prevented from heating up. It seemed like every day was in danger of melting. Everyone wanted him to live, grandma, father, sisters, but no one ever asked him if he wanted to live. Yin probably didn't want to at all. He doesn't feel the fun of living, he only feels the pain. In this world, he has no friends, and there will be no friends. He has relatives, but the love they give him makes him almost breathless. Sometimes he even doubts whether they love him or his status as a descendant. When he couldn't sleep at night, he wanted to kill himself more than once. He thought of many ways, but he didn't need to hang himself, cut his wrists and take medicine. If the medicine is poured out, he can achieve his goal. In fact, he also did this before, but the result was that the person who served him was locked in the yard and severely punished. If he hadn't heard the movement and drove out, he was so frightened that he coughed violently, almost coughing his life out, and the person who served him, the boy, was afraid that he would be beaten to death. But since then he has understood that his life is not only his own, but also the lives of those around him. He could die without caring about the sadness of his family members, but he couldn't care less about the life and death of those around him, especially Chang Shao was chosen by him personally, he was his man. So he felt that being a human being was boring. In life, he couldn't fight against heaven; in death, he couldn't fight against people. Life and death cannot be decided, and it is the first time in the ages to be a human being. He was already prepared to live his life according to their arrangements, but in the end, he was still a little unwilling. After finally becoming a human being, why would he be trapped in this small courtyard even when he was about to die? So when he was preparing to marry him at home, he spent a lot of effort to persuade his family to send him to the Imperial College to study. He doesn't want much, he just wants to go out and see other people, other places. Anyway, he has to let his heart know that he has lived in this world. Even if it's only 2 years, or even a year. So for the first time, Yin went out of the house regularly to go to the Imperial College to go to school. Although it will increase the load on his body and it is uncomfortable to get up every day, but he is not tired of it, which makes him feel alive. He could feel that the doses of medicines that had been sent recently were getting bigger and bigger. They were waiting for his body to recuperate to the best level, and waiting for him to find the right person to marry him, and then get married and have children. Once a child is born, his mission of staying in this world in this life is considered complete. Yin probably thought that he would live every day as if it was his last. Before he entered the imperial prison, he never expected to meet people like Bai Shan, Zhou Man, and Bai Er. He knew that many people out there hated him, they wouldn't make friends with him, or even associate with him, and he knew why. It never occurred to him to make friends either. Make friends, you will be sad when your friends die, right? So it's boring, since we all know that we have a short life, why do we bother to make friends? To cheat a tear? When Yin himself was emotional, whether it was sadness, anger, or shame, as long as his emotions fluctuated, tears would flow down uncontrollably. He hated this kind of himself very much, and he once reformed with Chang Shao in private. But when he was emotional, he would cry. He tried his best to hold back the redness of his eyes, but his emotions would become more agitated, and he would faint dizzily in the end. He thinks those standing opposite him should be more afraid of fainting than crying. So he had no choice but to not change. Anyway, for him, face or something, he can't even be considered a human being, so what face is there? But still very angry. Especially because of him, his sister always went to trouble those people, not only angry, but also ashamed. He even had the idea of not going to school anymore, but when he thought about it, this was an opportunity he fought for with his life, why didn't he go? He thought that the struggle with Bai Shan would end up like the previous ones, with Bai Shan being defeated by his older sisters and finally keeping away from hostility to him, but he didn't expect that his senior sisters and juniors would come to him. What's more, he didn't expect that his senior sister was a young lady younger than him, obviously younger than him, but when she saw him, she looked old-fashioned. After seeing him, instead of scolding and insulting him, she spoke to him sincerely. "You are sick, this is a disease, it must be cured." Yin Or's eyes were red at the time, and he thought she was swearing, but after a pause, she realized that it was not, she was just stating that she really thought he was sick. It was the first time someone said that he was crying because he was sick, and Yin looked at her curiously. For many years afterward, whenever thinking of their encounter, Yin would be thankful for his rising, otherwise he would not have gone to the Imperial College, nor would he have met Bai Shan, and thus met Zhou Man and Bai Er. He even thanked his sisters a little. If they hadn't stopped Bai Shan, the four of them probably wouldn't have had so many interactions. Since then, for the first time, Yin felt kindness from outsiders and the feeling of being treated equally. It turns out that being treated without pity like this makes people so happy. He was very happy that he had made friends. For the first time, he felt that it was a good feeling to be alive. Whether it's Bai Shan, Zhou Man, or Bai Er, they are all healthy. They can not only run and jump, cry and laugh wantonly, but they can also trap people with sex. Being human is so much fun. For the first time, Yin may have the idea of living for himself. He wants to live, not to carry on the family line, but to live according to his own ideas. Even if he dies early, he is willing. Many times, he wanted to talk to Bai Shan, he wanted to give him longevity, he had already pretended to be a deed, but he just couldn't give it away. After all, he wasn't courageous enough, and he couldn't say that to his grandmother's expectant eyes. In the end, Zhou Man made the decision for him and told him, as long as you don't get married and take good care of your body, I can make you live for many years, really. With this reason, Yin Ryu was finally able to tentatively talk to his grandmother. It's a pity that grandma doesn't trust Zhou Man. No, she probably doesn't trust him. Yin Ju made the third most daring decision in his life. He poured out the medicine made for him at home, went to drink the medicine made by Zhou Man, and accepted her injection. This was probably the second most correct decision he made in his life. It was also from that day that he deviated from the path chosen by his family, and it became more and more deviant until he was able to follow his own ideas completely. Yin Ju once asked his father, "Don't you blame me?" Yin Li shook his head, "No blame, as long as you are alive." Yin He asked with red eyes, "Then why didn't you think so before?" Yin Li said helplessly, "I used to think so too. I thought you lived the best life like that. I didn't know you lived so hard like that." The extra episode is coming to an end. Recently, I am working on the information and outline of the new book, so there is not much in the world. I will update 2 chapters every day in the future. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3424. The Yin family tried their best to keep him alive. It is his responsibility to carry on the family line for the Yin family. Everyone is living like this. They have rights and responsibilities. He didn't know that Yin might become world-weary because of this, and would rather die than enjoy this right. Yin Li said, "The new emperor's ascension to the throne will bestow favor on me, and I will ask His Majesty to bestow grace on you." The title of the county son is still a bit low. It was probably the last thing he could do for his son. If there is no accident, his marquee should be handed over directly to his grandson. Yin Or has been living in his own county mansion these years, and only occasionally returns to Yin's mansion for a period of time. The Yin family has long been the head of his 6 sister's family. The eldest son of Yin's 6th sister is not too young. He has been taught by Yin Li himself since he was born, and he is a fairly qualified heir. Although Yin Ju's health has improved a lot in the past few years, and he no longer seems to have died prematurely, but Yin Li still can't help but worry. He has no wife and no children, and is alone. Yin Li always has a sense of fear. What if he leaves too, leaving him alone in the world to suffer? So he wished he could have more protection. You can adopt a child from your sister. You have a title on your body. Presumably they are willing to let their son adopt you. Yin refused, "Father, I don't like raising children." "Then let your older sisters adopt them for you when they grow up, and then you can choose one among them. Of course, it's best to choose from your 6th older sister because her children are all named Yin. If Yin chooses them, they don't need to change their surnames, and they can inherit them directly." Yin He, "Let's talk about it when I'm about to die." How do you do that? Adopting them is for them to take care of you. Yanju smiled and said, Father, I have someone to take care of me, I don't need children, and I don't have to worry about the affairs behind me, my sisters will definitely take care of me, and if I die, I just set it on fire and scattered the ashes now, it is very comfortable to return to the world, so why trap yourself in such mundane things? Yin Li, do you want to become a monk? Yin Ji shook his head and said, leaving home and cultivating the Tao are just a form, so don't stick to it. He is not a monk, but he can read Buddhist scriptures and discuss the scriptures with famous monks all over the world. So identity is just a form, and if you get it, you will be more constrained. He feels that he is fine now, and he lives at home when he is free. If he is not free, he goes to a Buddhist temple or Taoist temple to relax for a while, and he can do whatever he wants. Anyway, he is not short of money, and his status is here. No Buddhist temple or Taoist temple will reject him. He comforted Yin Li, Father, don't worry, I'm doing well, do you see how much Bai Shan and Zhou Man envy me? The emperor passed away, the crown prince ascended the throne, Bai Shan and Zhou Man were both entrusted with important responsibilities, the two of them were very busy during this time, and occasionally they got together for a meal, and they looked at him with envy. Yin Li is confirmed now, Yin really doesn't like the so-called starting a family, he doesn't even have the desire to do so. He is both happy and sad in his heart, he has no worldly desires, so he should be happy with this kind of life, right? Yin Li cheered up, and said to him, I'll separate your siblings after His Majesty's decree comes. At that time, I'll give you more money. Even if you don't have a family, you can't live your life in vain. He said, when you feel lonely in the future, call the children of your sisters to come and talk to you, and choose a sensible and filial servant from among them, even if it's just to talk to you. Yin He, you have a long life, and children are not fun, how can you call me here just because you want to talk to me? Yin may have a good relationship with his sisters, but he doesn't have much affection for his nephews and nieces. One is that they rarely meet, the other is that it is difficult for him to talk to these children, and their education is very different from his cognition. He is closer to the children of Bai Shan's Human and Bai Er, but it is difficult to get close to the children of his sisters. Every time he thinks about this matter, he feels that he is indifferent and ruthless, regardless of relatives. Otherwise, how could his mood fluctuate more and more low when facing relatives? Yin Li is just mentioning that Yin is still in good health, and this matter will take a long time, so I will talk about it later. But the matter of sealing cannot be delayed. The new emperor ascended the throne, one is to reward the heroes, and the other is to win the hearts of the new emperor. After the funeral of the first emperor, he began to plan to use his own talents and add heroes. Bai Shan and Zhou Man are the new emperor's own people, and give them new positions. Not to mention these, veteran officials like Yin Li may be given titles, or rewards. It all depends on the new emperor's treatment of them. Impressions and achievements in the period of the first emperor. Among them, besides Zhao Qiuagong, the uncle of the country, the most striking one is Yin Li. Zhao Qiuagong is the uncle of the new emperor, considered a relative, the crown prince is very restrained, no, the new emperor is very restrained, under the suggestion of the queen mother, he only added a title to him, gave him some rewards, and did not wantonly reward him. Regarding Yin Li, the new emperor has less scruples. The main reason is that Yin Li has no son. Oh, no, he has no son in the court to inherit his connections. His grandson is still young. He probably just learned the Analects of Confucius, it takes at least 10 years to become an official. Yin Li was known for his loyalty during the first emperor's reign, he was only loyal to the emperor, now that the emperor has changed, he is naturally only loyal to the new emperor. The new emperor had a good impression of him. Although he had his own confidant general, but the opponent's qualifications were not enough, So the new emperor only transferred him to the imperial army as a deputy, and the commander was still Yin Li. In order to stabilize Yin Li, he wanted to seal the other party. Yin Li waited for a long time and finally waited for the emperor to summon him. He was very straightforward and said that he would be loyal to His Majesty. Of course, he also knew that the emperor valued him. In order to live up to the emperor's value, why don't you watch and seal my beloved son? He mentioned Yin Or's body again, indicating that he can't be tired, can't do a real job, and only needs some kindness. The emperor suddenly realized that he understood, and asked Yin Li to step down. As soon as Yin Li left, the emperor issued a decree. Yin He, the emperor accompanied me to read, and advised me during the study, so that I dare not slack off in state affairs. His father is loyal and brave, and I will not fall into the righteousness of loyalty and courage. Adding the title of Yin or Aningbo. Bai Shan, who had just taken over the posts of governor of Hubei and Yangzhou, was blinded when he heard the imperial decree, and couldn't help but go to the imperial hospital to have lunch with Zhou Man. The two sat facing each other and ate the working meal provided by the palace, with tears in their eyes, envy. Zhou Man stuffed a piece of meat with tears in his eyes. I'm so envious. What is lying to win? That's it? Yin might be promoted to Uncle Anning. The Yin family was overjoyed, and then decided to have a big banquet for the guests. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3425. As the protagonist of the banquet guests, Yin Ru is very leisurely. His county mansion has become the uncle's mansion. Fortunately, there are still vacant houses around him, and the Ministry of Right simply chose an empty house next to him. After checking the specifications, the middle wall was demolished. The mansion is combined into one. It is considered as his uncle's mansion. Just like that, the 6 elder sisters of the Yin family were still very dissatisfied. When they came to the door, they complained chirpingly, "It's different after all. When the late emperor was here, who would dare to wrong our Yin family like this? Brother, you add the title of uncle, the Ministry of Rights must ask for another, choose a new house for you." Yin Ju frowned slightly and said, "That's what I mean. I'm used to living here, so I don't want to part with this yard. And I'm alone, so what's the point of having such a big house?" He said, "If it wasn't against the rules, I wouldn't even want the mansion next to me." "How can you do that?" "If you don't want it, others will only look down on our Yin family even more," Sister Yin said. "If you want it, you have to. Otherwise, you have a good temper, and next time they will pick you to bully." Yin Ju smiled and said, "I see." Sister Yin sighed, "I don't know if you really know, or you're just trying to put us off." When they saw the wall that was torn down, the sisters got angry again. "This wall is too ugly to tear down. How long has the mansion over there been empty, and I will give it to you without tidying it up." "Yin He, I asked them to demolish it like this. I think it has the beauty of a broken wall. I plan to plant some vines around the broken wall after a while. As for the mansion over there, all the houses will be locked, leaving only garden. Anyway, he can't live in those houses, and there are still dust after cleaning, so it's better to lock them up. However, the roof and walls do need to be repaired, and manual maintenance will be required in the future." Yin He sighed and said, "That's why I said that if the house gets bigger, it will be troublesome, but the cost will be higher instead." The sisters immediately felt distressed when they heard this, and hurriedly said, "Is it because the money is not enough? Don't be afraid, I will send you some money later. It just so happens that there will be a banquet this time. When the time comes, we will stuff it in a gift box and send it to you. Don't write it down on the gift list, as long as you know it. Just during the national funeral, your brother-in-law can't go out to drink and socialize, which saves a lot of money." Yin He, "Sister, I'm not short of money." However, his sisters looked at him with pity. we know that you spend less money, but you are the son of the Ho family, and now you are the uncle, so you can't wrong yourself too much. Yes, we know that you have no other income. If you are short of money in the future, tell your sister, and the sisters will get it for you. Seeing that they were like this again, Yin shut his mouth obediently. He knew that it was useless to argue with his sisters, because they only believed what they believed, and the explanation was unclear. Well, you can ask Joe Man to come over and sit down. It was said that a banquet was going to be held, but it couldn't be done right away. Firstly, the mansion he came with hadn't been tidied up, secondly, it was still the period of national mourning, so the banquet could not be held. So they are waiting for the national mourning period to pass. It has been more than 3 months since the first emperor passed away, and the new emperor issued an edict that the ordinary people should observe the country's filial piety for 3 months, and the children of officials and eunuchs should observe the country's filial piety for half a year. There are still more than 2 months before the end of the national filial piety. Yin Or went to the imperial city in plain clothes and waited outside the household department. When Bai Shan came out, he stopped when he saw the carriage parked diagonally opposite. He wobbled over, knocked on the wall of the car, and Chang Xiao, who was leaning against the wall and was about to fall asleep, woke up immediately, wiped his mouth. Bai Shangshu. He was about to open the curtain in a hurry, but Yin had already pushed open the window, and poked his head out from the window to talk to him, going to the office. Bai Shan nodded. Not working overtime. Bai Shan said with a smile, at first, I wanted to go out to eat something and then come back to work overtime, but since you are here, then I won't work overtime. He asked, you can't come here at this time to enter the palace to thank you, can you? Yin He, your majesty is busy, the signboards handed over have been queued until the end of the 10-day period, and only then will I enter the palace to thank you. Bai Shan nodded, so you came to find me. Yin Ju said with a smile, the main reason is to find Ziqian, but she is in the palace and I can't go in, so I came to you first. Bai Shan said, I'll call her for you. But he didn't go there in person, but went back to the household department to write a letter, put it in an official document to the imperial hospital, and handed it to the internal officer to send to the palace. The internal officials received the official documents and went into the palace. Most of the internal officials in the 3 provinces and 6 ministries are female officials, who have emerged in the past 2 years. They mainly do things like organizing files and delivering documents like clerks. Especially after the Yamen, the officials of the 3 provinces and 6 ministries can't go in and out of the palace anymore. At this time, it is most appropriate to work overtime and hand things over to the internal officials. However, the DPRK and China have criticized this a lot in the past 2 years, officials have come and gone, and it has not stabilized. However, the household department kept one, and she was once a talented person of the late emperor. After the late emperor left, she was transferred to be the female official of the Empress Dowager, and the Queen Mother asked her to come to the household department as a female official. Others may not know why, but Bai Shan knows. Speaking of which, this person is also related to Gongdu, and is one of Zhou Man's few experiences in Gongdu. Lady Wu sent the official document to Tai Hospital. Zhou Man was still working overtime, and there was no sign of going to the government office at all. There are 3 fires for a new official to take office, and the same is true for the new emperor, although he had already taken over the government for several months before the first emperor passed away. But when he really sat in this position, he found that he had too many things to weigh. Before, because his father was in front of him, he felt that he was under a lot of pressure, but he could still do it. The emperor was gone, and when he ascended the throne, and really faced the civil and military affairs of the court and the whole world, he realized that he could not use the power in his hand like his father, to the point of dictating. He had to let the civil and military forces of the Manchu dynasty, the people of the world, and the aristocratic families see his ability, so that they could obey him. After weighing the matter, the emperor decided to start with the Imperial Medical Office and the Ministry of Household Affairs. Not to mention the Hubu, the former minister of the Hubu is Yang Heshu. He is a talent trained for him by the late emperor, and the emperor thinks he is barely usable. And the Shangshu who is taking over now is his confidant Bai Shan, so the household department is credible. Not to mention the Imperial Medical Office. The Imperial Medical Office has been under Zhou Man's control. As we all know, the Imperial Medical Office is the power of the Eastern Palace. Therefore, it is best to make political achievements in these two places, and it is also best to subdue the people of the world. The emperor selected these two places, and Bai Shan and Zhou Man went crazy. Especially Zhou Man, when the new emperor came to the throne, in order to show his favor, he threw all kinds of titles on Zhou Man's head as if he didn't want money. God knows that she doesn't care about these titles at all. Then there will be an idle title on her head, and she doesn't like the kind of title with a real job at all. When Officer Wu arrived at the Imperial Hospital, Zhou Man had been at the desk for more than an hour, but there were still a dozen unprocessed official documents on the case. Hearing the sound of footsteps, she didn't raise her head, and asked directly, "What's the matter?" "See you tomorrow." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3426. The female officer said, "Decree from the Zhou Department, this is an official document from the Ministry of Household Affairs." "Leave it alone." Zhou Man still buried her head in her writing, and when she saw that she hadn't moved, she looked up and saw that it was a military officer. She put down her pen and said with a smile, "So it's a military officer, why bother you to deliver the official documents in person?" The female officer smiled and said, "Decree of Zhou, this is an official document written by Bai Shangshu himself, and the next official must hand it over to you." Zhou Man was taken aback for a moment, then took it, opened the official document and saw the letter inside. She opened it and glanced at it, then smiled and said, "Please trouble Wu Naiguan, I have received the official document." Wu Naiguan bowed and stepped back. Zhou Man glanced at the unprocessed official documents on the table, opened them and selected them, stuffed the official documents that could be taken out of the palace into his wide sleeves, and left. "Alas, I have to work overtime when I get home, so tired." Yanju and Bai Shan had already moved their positions. The carriage stopped from the gate of the household gate to the gate of the palace, and they could be seen as soon as Zhou Man came out. She came to the yamen on horseback today. Bai Shan led her horse out ahead of time. When he saw her coming out, he waved his hand and said with a smile, "Yin, I'm treating you to dinner." Zhou Man clasped his hands in front of him, and walked forward slowly. "What do you eat during the national mourning period?" Yin turned away and let her get into the car. "Be a vegetarian." Zhou Man supported Bai Shan's hand and got into the car first, and the three of them sat on the left and right in the car. Before she asked, "Is it a vegetarian food made by Ji Greed?" Jaikian is a monk of Hyoguo Temple, who has been cooking in the kitchen. One day, he had a heartwarming, and had the idea of marrying a wife and having children. The cook just signed a labor contract and raised his new wife in the mansion. But the vegetarian dishes he cooks are really delicious. Zhou Man and Bai Shan often go to his house to eat for this reason. The plaque of the county mansion was taken down, and there is nothing on it now. The main entrance is closed, but the east and west corner gates are open, and many people come in and out of the east corner gate. They entered through the west corner gate. The mansion was quite quiet. Bai Shan said, "I thought your place is lively, you always like quietness, Man Bao, and I wonder if you will move to the temple to live for a while." Yin Yu said, "I originally planned to do this, but you don't know, my sisters are keen to add things to my house recently. I am afraid that if I leave and come back, this mansion will not be like the one I live in now." He still prefers his present arrangement. Yin Ryu asked, "Are you going to see the mansion that came here?" Zhou Man replied in one gulp, "Okay." Yin Ju took them there. "The house I came here has been unoccupied for many years, and many places in it need to be repaired. The house is unoccupied, and it can be repaired simply. It's just that the corridors along the road, the garden, and the garden behind are all in use. Although Yin he likes to be quiet, he will come out for a walk occasionally. The large mansion also has great benefits. When the time comes, the gardens on both sides will be connected and arranged, and there will be more places to watch." Seeing the broken wall they demolished, Zhou Man said, "Wow, this broken wall is so beautiful, you can plant flowering vines on both sides." Bai Shan also nodded, "The colors can also be matched, all kinds of colors can be used, I vaguely remember purple and blue vines." Yin Or nodded, "I also like that cold look, that's why I wanted to ask Ziqian." In terms of understanding of plants, no one in the Manchu dynasty can match Zhou Man. Zhou Man said with bright eyes, "I know, I still have some, and I'll pick them up for you to choose later." Now the genes of the plants in the shopping mall are much more stable, and the direction of variation is much less, and there are many dug flowers and plants in her garden, and there are many plants that meet her needs or requirements. "But," Zhou Man asked him tentatively, "do you want regular flowers and plants, or unconventional ones?" Yinju laughed out loud, "You two know me, I really want to be unconventional. I don't mind having a few of the peony trees that you gave Brother Tang before." Zhou Man understood, "Are you planning to turn your garden into a strange garden?" Yin said with a smile, "It's just for relaxation. There are very few outsiders in my house, so it doesn't matter if it's messy and weird. Yin or family reunion is in Yin's mansion, he doesn't hold banquets, and he doesn't have many friends, so besides Bai Shan and others who come to his mansion occasionally, even his father and sisters seldom come. The mansion next door has been abandoned for many years. Except for a few big trees, the rest of the place is overgrown with weeds, which basically have to be pulled out and replanted." Zhou Man stopped in a cleared space, and pointed, "Plant a piece of peony here, and it will bloom in spring next year. It must be very beautiful." Yin nodded, "I like big peonies. I remember there are many in your garden." Zhou Man waved his hand very generously and said, "I dug it up and brought it to you. And that strange peony tree that can mutate into an unkillable peony tree. Here, I'll give you all." Zhou Man smiled, "I still have a mutated plum tree, do you want to try it?" Bai Shan couldn't help touching her head. Zhou Man liked plum blossoms. He brought back a plum blossom with interest. It was said that once the flowers bloomed, they had various colors, including all the colors of plum blossoms. It was extremely gorgeous and rare. This was indeed the case in the first year, and it was fine in the second year, but in the third year, the flowers of the plum tree became more and more rare, perhaps because it was once planted in the underworld, and there is always something strange about it. It happened that Emperor Xian was seriously ill at that time, and it was not a good thing for such a strange tree to grow in their back house, so Bai Shan and Zhou Man cut down the tree overnight. Fortunately, there are few servants in their family, and Mrs. Zheng has always led people to take care of the garden, and the servants have a tight mouth, so they didn't leak it. Now that the late emperor passed away, everything has been settled. Obviously Zhou Man has the idea of planting plum trees again. When the time comes, I'll plant one at home and one at yours, and see how they develop in different directions." Zhou Man said, "Don't worry, I've already found a reason for their strangeness. Just like rice, it is normal to hybridize and mutate." Yin couldn't help being curious, "Is it the plum tree in your backyard that has been blooming for 2 consecutive years? Isn't it dead?" "Oh, there are still seeds." Yin Ryu nodded, "Okay." The next day, Zhou Man took people to bring all kinds of flowers, plants, and trees. The 6 elder sisters of the Yin family watched silently, and had to admit that they really couldn't catch up with their younger brother's aesthetics, and it was difficult for them to intervene for a while. The tree is still a tree at this time, and there is nothing unusual about it. At this time, Yin Jian has not thought that he will love the plum tree that he planted by accident so much in the future, and even lie on the tree when it is in full bloom. Leave this world safely. At this time, they were still planting flowers and trees with care. 3 months later, the national filial piety ended, and the wedding banquets and birthday banquets that each family had accumulated for half a year were held together. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3427. Everyone held back for half a year. Although many people were very sad when the late emperor passed away, time is the best medicine to heal the pain. After half a year, few people mourned for the late emperor anymore. Everyone happily accepted the new emperor, and then happily held various autumn banquets, and yin, or banquets, were mixed in, which was not conspicuous at all. This is what Yin Yu thought. In fact, after receiving his post, there are quite a few people who care about it. Especially those with unmarried daughters at home. Speaking of which, Yin Ju is not young. It was rumored that he would not survive a weak crown, but until now he is living well, and his body looks weaker than ordinary people, and he no longer looks like he died prematurely. Most importantly, he looks good. He was about to stand up, but he still looked so young. Although he was not an official, he had a title and a good family background. It was not impossible for his daughter to marry him. Better than those old widowers with sons and daughters. Therefore, on the day of Yin's family banquet, there were a lot of people here, and every visitor brought their daughter, niece, or granddaughter with them. However, as the host, Yin, did not appear in front of people as before, his 6 brothers-in-law took care of the front, and his 6 sisters entertained in the backyard. He was still sitting in his yard in loose casual clothes, slowly flipping through a book in his hand. When Zhou Man ran over to look for him excitedly, a smile appeared on his face. He put down his book and looked at them. "Why are you so slow?" Zhou Man suppressed his excitement. "I'm a guest here, why don't I pay a visit to Master Yin and your sisters?" "Yin he, this is the Earl's mansion, not the Yin mansion." "I am the master, right? Then you have to sit in the front and let people see you." "Forget it, don't argue about it," Zhou Man said excitedly. "Guess what we heard in front?" Seeing her blushing with excitement, Yin turned his head and asked Bai Shan, who was sitting next to him, "What did you hear? I thought you picked up gold on the way here." Just as Bai Shan was about to speak, the courtyard door was pushed open again. Bai Erlang ran in with an excited face, followed by Princess Mingda, who walked quickly but did not lose her elegance. He ran in excitedly. "Yinju, guess what we heard in front?" "Yin or?" He simply leaned back, leaned on the chair, put the book in front of his belly, and asked leisurely, "What did you hear?" Zhou Man rushed in front of Bai Erlang and said, "Someone wants to marry you." Bai Erlang's words were stuck in his chest, so he added, "Many people overwhelmed your brothers-in-law. When I came in, your 6th brother-in-law waved to me. As soon as I raised my hand, he was surrounded by people living. Zhou Man, it's the same in the backyard. Everyone is gathering around your sisters to inquire about the news." Yinju frowned slightly. "They didn't agree, did they?" "No, don't worry, it's all passed to your father," Bai Shan said. "You haven't married for so many years, and now your family has been inherited by your 6th sister. Even if your father wants to betroth you, he must ask what you mean." Only then did Yinhu feel relieved, but his brows were still slightly frowned. He looked at Zhou Man. "I'm afraid I will need your help later." Zhou Man raised his eyebrows. "Release the diagnosis that you are not suitable for marriage." Yin nodded and leaned on the chair relaxedly. "I don't want to get married." Zhou Man replied straight away, "Okay, I'll help you anyway." She wasn't lying, and Yin Yu was indeed not suitable for marriage. Interested people did not expect that they would be suppressed after just a single thought. Someone heard Zhou Shuling's order saying that Yin's body is not suitable for marrying a wife, otherwise it will not only affect his life expectancy, but the child born is likely to inherit his diseases, and even more difficult to treat. Yin Li, who had no hope at all, completely lost his mind when he heard the words, and began to help Yin or raise his family fortune. The division of the Yin family means that Yin Yu and his 6 sisters separated. For the other 5 sisters, Yin Li just gave them some meaning. After all, they had been married for many years. But they still went home to testify. Yin Li left his ancestral property to 6th sister Yin, but left most of the land near the capital to Yin He, and the shop was divided into 2, Yin or half, Yin's 6th sister half. In addition, there are some collectibles and cash. Yin might get rich suddenly, but he would not refuse. He would take whatever his father gave him. Anyway, after he died, these things would still be returned to the Yin family, and it would be 6th sister Yin's child who would inherit them. Although Yin may not be extravagant, he is still very happy when he has money, and there are more things he can do. For example, he can charter a whole boat and walk comfortably along the opened canal. Famous rivers and waters in the world, customs of various places, and the outstanding people born in the mountains and rivers, there are too many reasons for him to go out. If it wasn't because his body didn't allow him to walk too far alone, and he needed to come back regularly to see Zhou Man's body and prescribe medicine and needles, he would have to explore all the mountains and rivers in the world first. It's a pity that his body prevents him from being too tired, and he can't go to places where the climate changes too much. Otherwise, no one knows if he will become acclimatized because of drinking an extra sip of water, and then die. Yin may have been waiting for the day when Bai Shan and Zhou Man resigned from office. This class lasted for 13 years, the world was stable, all nations came to court, and His Majesty was powerful everywhere. Of course, the real reason is that Zhou Man and Bai Shan have been in power for too many years, especially Bai Shan, who has been the left side for too long. Now, the emperor is about to hate each other, and the successors can do what they want to do. This dynasty is no longer necessary for them, so if they don't resign at this time, when will they wait? The most important thing is that they feel that they have been officials for a long time, especially Zhou Man, who has worked for more than 20 years. If they don't retire, do they want to stay in office for the rest of their lives? The 2 resigned excitedly, and the emperor declined as usual. Although Yin or the 3 felt that the emperor wanted to accept, in order not to chill the hearts of the courtiers, the emperor kept trying to persuade him to stay. So Zhou Man made Bai Shan sick, so sick that he couldn't get out of bed, and the emperor came out of the palace to visit him. At that time, Yin or was also visiting the princess's mansion, and he saw Bai Shan's complexion was pale, and he looked terminally ill. Zhou Man said miserably, "Your Majesty, Bai Shan is overworked. Please allow him to resign and take care of his health. Su Chen stays at home to take care of him." The emperor looked at Bai Shan's face again and again, and finally turned his head to look at Zhou Man suspiciously. "Are you really sick?" Zhou Man nodded sadly, "I'm really sick, I swear." Bai Shan on the bed looked at the emperor eagerly, "Your Majesty, why did I make fun of you with my body?" The emperor murmured and agreed. At that time, Yin Hu also felt that Bai Shan was really sick, so he came to visit him every day, fearing that one day he would be they would not have time to see each other for the last time. Then Yin Ju saw that Bai Shan's spirit was improving day by day, and his face was getting more rosy day by day. Within a month, he was alive and kicking, and he was already able to punch in the yard. However, he still didn't go out, and still released the news of his serious illness. Until 3 months later, the 2 quietly packed their luggage and went out. Yin He, who had been prepared for a long time, brought Chang Shao and his entourage to follow with a wave of his hand. The 3 successfully reunited outside the city, and then headed south. After all, They haven't reached the Lingnan area yet. Good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3428. The mountains and rivers in the world are different in geography and 4 seasons. Even if it is the scenery that has already been seen, goodbye is still exciting. Following Zhou Man, Yin may have seen many beautiful scenery that he thought he would never see in this life. Standing on the hill, the eyes are clear and crisp, and there is the sound of ding dong in the ear. Yin or exhaled, and said with a smile, "The last time we passed by here was spring, when the mountain flowers were blooming, half of the mountain was full of flowers. It is a wild pomegranate flower mixed with pink, white, and red, and now the flowers are gone, but there is another kind of aura." Zhou Man nodded and grinned, "It's very beautiful. The green beauty is not weaker than a mountain of flowers." Bai Shan took out a handkerchief and wiped the dirt on her face. "It's a pity that the mountain is too humid, otherwise it would be good for us to live here for a while. The two have already resigned, and the children have grown up and went to experience separately. There is no drag on the family, and the time is freely arranged. It is entirely possible to live here for a year or so, and enjoy the scenery before leaving." Zhou Man and Yin Or didn't think of this at first, but when they heard him mention it, they immediately became interested. "If it's wet," Zhou Man said, "I can make tea soup for everyone to dispel dampness. Although it is not very tasty, the effect must be good." Yin Or has already looked around to choose a place. "It's not very good to build a house here, you have to go a little higher, and the scenery is better." Bai Shan took a serious look at the two of them, and after confirming that they were serious, he turned his head and said to his followers, "How far is the nearest village from here?" The follower said, "There is a village 20 miles to the east, and there is a town about 10 miles ahead." Bai Shan then nodded, "Have someone go to the villages and towns to find someone who can repair the house, prepare the materials and send them, and we'll go to the mountains to choose a place." Follower, "What kind of house to build?" Bai Shan thought for a while and said, "If you build on the mountain, the stones are not easy to transport, so let's make mud bricks." Zhou Man, "The location must be chosen well. Not only must it have a good view, but it can also be used as a resting place for hunters in the future. This house will not be a loss if it is well built." Yin He, "You have considered a lot. It doesn't cost much to build a small courtyard, not to mention that the labor here is so cheap." The three of them walked between the two hills for a long time, and finally found a suitable place after staying overnight. One of the mountains is close to the top of the mountain. The terrain here is flat, but you can overlook the scenery of the two mountains. A stone platform protruding out is flat and facing the sun. You don't do anything every day, just lie on that big rock. It is also very pleasant to bask in the sun, look up to see the verdant top of the mountain, and look down to see the clouds and mist. It's just that things are not so lucky. But they have money. As long as they have money, someone will deliver things for them." Bai Shan made a simple plan, and the attendants rolled up their sleeves to clean up the ground, and the construction started after the invited people brought up the clay bricks and wood together. Bai Shan and Zhou Man were at the side to help. Yin Ryu rolled up his sleeves and wanted to step forward, but he was out of breath after only a few lifts. Zhou Man hurriedly asked Chang Shao to help him aside. "You should rest." Yin Or stood aside. Chang Shao looked at it and said, "Lang Jun, I brought the futon, you can sit on the rock and rest for a while, and see how the scene is." Yin Yu nodded, "Okay, I won't cause you any trouble." Chang Shao looked at Suan who was on the side, and Suan hurriedly went to the luggage area to find a futon and put it on the large flat rock. After Yin sat down, Suan went to dig out the stove and tea sets, etc. After finding firewood, he had to boil water for him to make tea. The house could not be built in a day or two. The servants suggested that they live in the village and town first, and they would move in after the house was built. But Zhou Man refused, and said with excited eyes, "No, we will be stationed nearby, and you can just build houses. Keek had just reported to her several kinds of creatures that could be included, including many plants, so she decided to take a walk in the mountains. The reason why the three people chose this place is because there is a cave not far from here. There is dripping water in the cave, which gathers into a pool inside. There should be an undercurrent in the mountainside, and the water in the pool will not overflow, but also does not decrease. It is still very convenient to get to the cave from them. Step on a small path, and you will arrive there after a detour. The opening of the cave is on the dark side, at a 90-degree right angle to the place they chose, which is one of the reasons why they didn't choose a cave where they could live directly, because it was too humid there. It is not good for the body, and the cave is dark, and it is not good for the mood. This place is better, facing the sun, with an open mind. However, the water in the cave is delicious. Joe Man not only took a sip of it himself, but also collected some of it. He quietly studied it in the teaching room and found that the water was very good, so he poured a bucket of it as teaching materials and put it in the teaching room. Give it to Teacher Mo in the room. The Encyclopedia Museum is no stranger to Joe Man's behavior of picking up their wool at every opportunity, but when they cooperated with Joe Man back then, in order to obtain meteorites more conveniently, they relaxed the rules of the teaching room when they signed a contract with her, so that, for Alliance intelligent creatures with long lifespans, more than 10 years is very short, and they are embarrassed even if they want to regret it. However, although the two of them, the master and the apprentice, took advantage of the loopholes to gather their wool from time to time, they would not go too far, and they could still afford this expense. Over the years, the meteorites provided by Joe Man have played a major role in the scientific research of their alliance, especially in genetic research, which has made great progress. Not to mention that many of the creatures she collected are of great significance. The alliance has tolerated her, and the encyclopedia turned a blind eye to it. Joe Man collected a bucket of water and put it in the teaching room, and then sent an email to Teacher Mo, reminding him, the student accidentally got a bucket of delicious water, which has been tested and is rich in various minerals. Excellent, you can use it to make tea. I don't know how the tea sent to you last time is, do you like it? If so, I'll send you some more. Well, there's no need to send it. Tea can also be used as medicine. I'll put it in the teaching room too. You can take it when you need it. Teacher Mo came out of the laboratory and opened his personal terminal to look at all kinds of information. When he saw Joe Man's email, he felt a bit bitter in his mouth. After thinking about it, he tactfully rejected her tea. He still prefers to eat their own bean powder, which is not only fragrant, but also slightly sweet, which is much better than tea. However, water is acceptable, even for cooking soy flour. Water is also very important. Teacher Mo tasted the bean powder boiled with Joe Man's gift, not to mention, it was really delicious, so he generously invited his friends to drink together, and asked Joe Man again after drinking. Joe Man was also very happy to be able to give the teacher water. Anyway, the water does not cost money. He goes to the cave every day, fetches water, and brings it to the teaching room. Seeing her keenness to run into the cave, Yin also followed curiously. Isn't there only water in this cave? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3429. Joe Man let out a shh, motioning him to listen. It's more than that. Yin listened carefully, but still only heard the sound of water droplets. What else is there besides water? There's still water, Bai Shan said with a smile. Didn't you hear it? It's not just the sound of a drop of water falling. Yin turned his head to look at the water dripping continuously in the pool, and listened carefully, and sure enough there were other ticking sounds besides the dripping sound. He looked at the two of them in surprise. Bai Shan had accompanied Zhou Man to fetch water for the past 2 days, and that's how he found out. He pointed to a wall and said, the sound came from inside. Man Bao and I suspected that the inside was hollow, and there might be a hole, but we didn't want to break the balance here, so we didn't move. Everything in the world has its own rules. If they break it rashly, who knows if it will cause trouble? What if there is accumulated water all behind the stone wall? As soon as they broke through, they flowed out with a splash. God knows if they would be rushed down the mountain in one go. Just thinking about it for a while makes them timid. Their lives are so important, and they still cherish their lives. Zhou Man knew that there was no water behind the wall, but why did she want to break the wall? Yin Or put his ear to the wall and listened for a long time, and concluded, there is no water in it, but there are indeed quite a few drops of water dripping down. He was thoughtful. It seems that there must be a dark river under the mountain. There is no way that so much water has nowhere to go. Zhou Man asked, do you want to look for it? Yin asked, why should I look for it? Everyone has the desire to trace the source. I once wanted to dig down the mountain to see how the water went, where it was going, and then look up. Where did it come from? Yin He, no wonder Master Jichen likes you the most. Zhou Man, isn't it because of my superb medical skills and my beauty and kindness? Yin shook his head, because you are the same. They also like to get to the bottom of things. One thing, I insist on asking the end. If no one answers, one is bored in my heart and secretly pondering, and the other is. Yin Or looked Zhou Man up and down, and said worriedly, you don't really want to find a hidden river, but also a source of water. If you do this, you may need to destroy the current balance. Am I the kind of person who destroys the environment? Zhou Man promised that she would not mess around, and then wandered around and dug randomly under Keek's guidance. One day, she tossed in a cave under the mountain, and then entered a dark river. Yin might not be there, only Bai Shan was by her side. Holding the torch, Bai Shan silently turned his head to look at her. Zhou Man, I said, I just want to catch a fish, do you believe it? Bai Shan, do you want fish? Or does my little father-in-law want it? There are so many, I want to taste them too. Bai Shan understood Zhou Man's answer in an instant, so he held up a torch to take a picture on the water surface, and by chance caught a glimpse of a fish's tail passing by. Bai Shan took back the torch and said, we can't catch it, go back and call someone. Bai Shan took Zhou Man's hand and went back. The house on the mountain has been built, and the servants are taking wormwood and fragrant wood to smoke the house to get rid of the moisture, and they can move in at night. Yin Or was sitting on a deck chair under a tree, holding a book in his hand and was slowly flipping through it. When he saw that the trousers and the corners of the clothes were wet, he closed the book and said, are you going again, tossing in the cave? Bai Shan, she found the dark river. Yin raised his eyebrows, looked at Zhou Man with a half smile, and said he didn't know how to get to the bottom of it. Bai Shandao, there are fish in the river, they look very delicious, we plan to catch a few to taste. Yin Yu asked, do you need my help? No, I'll just take a few people down. Bai Shan looked around and asked, is the bed ready? Okay, I put them all in the house, and I can put the bedding and utensils in after the house is smoked. Bai Shan was very satisfied with the progress, so he chose 2 people who were good at water and fast enough to go down. Zhou Man excitedly followed. There was not only one kind of fish that could be recorded in the river, but also rare aquatic plants that were pulled at the bottom of the river. It is said that they were mutated and could be worth a lot of points. Recently, Teacher Mo's laboratory has developed a correction liquid for genetic defects. It is said to be a correction liquid, but in fact it just balances the genes, so that the dominant defective genes can reach a balance, and it cannot be completely repaired. Teacher Mo said that it would take a long time to study thoroughly. But this is also a progress. Balanced genes can at least weaken the impact of missing genes on the body, which can not only prolong the life of patients, but also restore the body from a sick state to a certain degree of health. It is only produced by the research laboratory, it is too expensive, and not everyone can buy it, it needs to be verified for qualification. As one of the meteorite providers, Jo Man is qualified to apply. And the fact that she has a genetic defect here is also well known there. If she applies, the success rate is still very high. In addition to buying medicine for Yin Yu, Jo Man also wants to save more points for the future. She wants to go to sea with Bai Shan. With points, she can buy life-saving things from the mall in case of danger. For example, the capsule ship that she only saw in the encyclopedia, which is said to be able to swim under the sea, is too expensive, especially since she has to pay a large amount of technology tax to buy it. But I really want to buy it? Ahem, of course, she will not waste points unless she is in danger. Money must be used wisely. She is still young, and she doesn't know how many years she will be working. She can only accumulate points by herself, so she has to save them. Yin Or didn't know that the fish they were going to catch was also related to his health, so he watched them go down the mountain leisurely, and he put away his books to look at their house. The house is very practical, with 3 rooms in the middle, the main room in the middle, and living rooms on the left and right sides. On the left is Yin Yu's residence, and on the right is the room of Bai Shan and Jo Man. Going down from the main room, a road was deliberately left empty, and there were also 3 rooms on the left and right sides, where their servants lived, as well as the firewood room and the kitchen. Yin went to see the furnishings in their room. Because it is on the mountain, the road is not easy to walk, and the carriage basically does not come, so it can only be carried by horses and mules, so there are not many things in the house. Tables, chairs, and benches were shipped separately and then assembled by carpenters. The wood materials are average, but everything that should be there is available. Yin Or walked to the table, stretched out his finger and pressed it, and looked out the window. When Bai Shan designed this room, he had someone open a big window for him, so that he could see the sea of cliffs and clouds outside when he tilted his head. Yin could not help but smile. After living in such a place for a long time, my heart is not only calm, but also opens up a lot. Chang Shao carried the quilt and came in to make the bed for him, and said, "If you like it, Mr. Lang, you can stay for a longer period of time. We have spent so much effort building the house, so we can't waste it." Yin Or nodded, "All right, let's stay for a while longer. Good night." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3430. Yin got excited and directed, "Find out the paint and ink, let's go out and make a painting." Yin was probably waiting for the setting sun in the sky, so he decided to draw another picture of the rising sun tomorrow, which happened to be symmetrical to it. When he was in the mood for painting, Jo Man and Bai Shan came back wet, followed by 2 servants carrying buckets. Seeing that Jo Man was so wet, Zibing trotted forward, "Lady, the kitchen hasn't started boiling water yet." "Jo Man, it's okay, burn it now, let's change clothes first." They returned with a full load today. Not only did they catch a bucket of fish, but she also fished in troubled waters and caught 2 different ones in the bucket for coke, but no one noticed. In addition, there is a kind of small snail in the dark river, 3 different kinds of aquatic plants, and fungi that grow on the wet rock wall. Jo Man picked them all. With Bai Shan's cover, she recorded all these things. When Jo Man happily changed his clothes and came out with Bai Shan, Yin Ju's painting was finishing. The 2 of them went up to look at it, and saw that the sunset in his painting was gorgeous, reddish-orange, full of vitality. Bai Shan asked, "This color palette?" "How?" Yin said, "I mixed this before. This paint is not easy to make. When I made it, I thought it would be the best to use it to paint the sunset. Jo Man, such a sunset is rare. It's like a fire burning under the clouds, making it red. Yin Or just asked, does it look good? Zhou Man couldn't go against his will, so he definitely nodded and said, it looks good. Yin Yu willfully said, just look good. The servants are already working in full swing, preparing dinner, boiling water for them to bathe, and cleaning up the housework. Because today is considered a housewarming, the meals are particularly well prepared, and Zibing even brought out the plum blossom wine that Zhou Man was interested in brewing before. When Yin Ju saw the small jar of plum blossom wine, he was speechless for a while. Why did you bring wine with you when you were away from home? Zhou Man looked regretful. This is flower wine, it can't be kept for too long, no one at home likes to drink it, it's a pity if it's poured out, there are only a few jars left, and it's easy to carry luggage with you when you go out. I'll let someone take it. Yin He covered his face with his hands and said, it's a pity that I'm too weak to drink, so I'll just watch you drink tonight. Bai Shan, the autumn wind is rustling, and the night is cold. If you don't want to drink too much wine, let's just have a drink and keep the rest. We will treat guests next time. Yin Ru looked at Bai Shan with an expression of you are making trouble for no reason. Is it polite to bring out such wine to entertain guests? Zhou Man looked at the two of them suspiciously, isn't the wine I make delicious? She said, I've drank it, it's sweet and doesn't taste like alcohol at all. Bai Shan, this is the biggest problem. How can there be wine without the smell of wine? Yin Yu smiled slightly and said, perhaps we can save it for Bai doesn't he like to drink recently? Zhou Man said with disgust, his second child is very mischievous now. Before we left Beijing, he said that he would be with us, but he and Mingda got stuck when we went out. When we first arrived in Lingnan, I wrote to ask for the address, saying that he and Mingda were coming soon, but half a year had passed, and there was no sign of anyone. She said, when he comes, I'm afraid the wine will dry up. So what kind of wine is this? Yin Or picked up a bowl to drink water. Zhou Man opened the wine jar, poured out a jug and gave it to Zibing to warm up the wine. I'm afraid it will be cold, let's drink hot wine. Yin Ru looked at Bai Shan. Bai Shan pondered for a moment and said, forget it, let's drink it cold, your wine needs to be drunk on ice to taste. Zhou Man patted the table and said happily, I think so too. It's always too sweet to drink when it's hot, and the sweetness is not very good. Bai Shan didn't even hold back, and said helplessly, you actually know, I thought you didn't know. Zhou Man picked up the jug and poured him a glass. I know this wine can't be compared with that made by my sister-in-law, but this plum blossom was brewed in winter when we collected them one by one and dried them. It's a pity to pour them out. Taste it, taste it. Zhou Man also drank a cup himself, although it was not very tasty, but the plum fragrance was clear, so it was still acceptable as a drink. While drinking, Zhou Man said to Zibing, make some sour plum soup tomorrow, it's delicious. Yin Or laughed out loud. The days on the mountain are relaxed and comfortable. Bai Shan and Zhou Man are keen on exploring the mountains and forests, and they go to the mountains every now and then. Yin may not have this hobby. He likes to sit on the rocks in front of the house and watch the sea of clouds. Sometimes the birds perched on the tree can make him look at them for a long time, and his heart is happy and peaceful. Occasionally, they also went to the nearby villages and towns to visit the market together, and Yin Or suddenly fell in love with setting up a stall in the market. Seeing that he liked it, Bai Shan and Zhou Man gave him various things from the mountains, and occasionally accompanied him to set up stalls in the market. They sell everything at the stall, and Yin may like to ask his servants to cook and put them on the stall, as well as the fish they catch from the river, the prey they hunt in the mountains, and the herbs that Zhou Man dug. Among them, herbs are the most. Zhou Man didn't want to dig at first, and those herbal medicines were all included, but there are too many medicines in the mountains. She can see plants that can be used as medicine after walking a few steps. Some of them are still growing in clumps. It's autumn, and many medicinal materials can be used as medicine. Seeing the medicinal materials that are full of trees, if she doesn't pick them, she will not be able to pass the test in her heart. There are too many. Picking it out, if you don't deal with it, you will be sorry for her craftsmanship, so the medicinal materials that Joe Man took out were all dried or processed. There are more and more things in the mountain house, and they bought a lot of things needed for various concoctions. Joe Man felt distressed after spending too much money. Although she could quietly stuff these tools into Keek's space and take them away when she left, she was still unwilling to earn them back. So they came down to set up stalls every 3 days in time for the big market. In the eyes of the residents of the nearby villages and towns, they just feel that they are not normal. It is true that although these three are wearing fine cloth clothes, you can tell by the dark lines on the clothes that they are not cheap. They are also sitting and setting up stalls with small stools like them, but there are 2 servants behind them, who came out to set up a stall and brought people along. Moreover, the 3 of them were not in a hurry to set up a stall, neither peddling nor impatient. They sat on a small stool with a book in their hands, and watched with open eyes that the people passing by passed by for a day. If they couldn't sell the food, they heated it up and ate it themselves, and took back the prey and medicinal materials they brought. A bunch of weirdos. Don't come to set up a stall for a good face, you can't even sell. In fact, the villagers all misunderstood them, and the 3 of them did not sell, except for Yin, who was too embarrassed to ask. Joe Man felt that the medicinal materials she concocted were excellent, and she was reluctant to sell them at a low price to people who did not know the goods, thinking that no one would buy them. There is a reason to put it away, and next time I pass by a big town, I will find a pharmacy and medical center before making a move. Bai Shan didn't like to talk. He had to talk a lot every day when he was prime minister, especially in recent years he often argued with the emperor, so now he doesn't like things that waste his voice very much.